Tonight, brutality shift. Ukrainians win the fight for Kyiv.
Kyiv stands despite Russia's effort to conquer the capital city.
As Russian President Vladimir Putin appoints the butcher of Syria to head a renewed war effort in the east.
Plus, primary divide.
I do believe that in Ohio, we're not a Republican state, we're a Trump state.
A wave of Republican incumbents faces challengers from their own grand old party.
And
yeah, the prices just are ridiculous, but what are we supposed to do?
Sky-high car prices are set to rise.
All this and more coming up on Faith Nation.
Defeated in Kyiv, Russia now sets its sights on eastern Ukraine. Welcome to Faith Nation from Washington. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Bratter. Tonight, Ukrainians in the eastern part of the country are being warned by officials to get out while they still can.
Signs point to Russia preparing to step up an assault on Ukraine's eastern front. Meanwhile, the United States is trying to convince India to break its neutrality and to help increase pressure on Moscow. Washington correspondent Matt Galka joins us now with tonight's top story. Matt.
Well, John and Jenna, Ukraine's president said Monday that tens of thousands of people have been killed in Mariupol. This as new images from Ukraine show an apparent massive buildup of Russian troops in the east. Ukrainian officials say civilians are still being targeted. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky telling his people Sunday night they believe the fight is shifting to eastern Ukraine. New satellite images show a massive Russian convoy east of Kharkiv, the country's second largest city. The armored trucks carrying artillery for a possible renewed strike. But Zelensky told his people they'd remain strong.
Можуть використовувати проти нас ще більше ракет, ще більше авіабомб, але
More than 50 people were killed when missile strikes targeted a train station full of people trying to flee the war. Ukrainian officials say more than 13,000 Ukrainians evacuated the eastern region of the country since Friday, adding to the more than 4.3 million who have fled the country since Russia's assault began. A large majority of the refugees, women and children, and more than half of them have gone to Poland.
I have friends and colleagues from the villages near Nizhyn. At the beginning, they told me Russian soldiers did not touch people and did not talk. But after some time, they started killing people.
Russia announced on Monday there would be a new commander in charge, General Alexander Dvornikov, a commander who led Russian forces in Syria and was accused of targeting civilians and destroying cities there.
The United States and India are going to continue our close consultation on how to manage the destabilizing effects of this Russian war.
Meanwhile, President Biden met with India's Prime Minister virtually, hoping to convince his fellow world leader to put pressure on Russia to end the fighting.
I not only appealed for peace, but also suggested that there be direct talks between President Putin and the President of Ukraine.
And this week, multiple members of Congress will be in Eastern Europe. A bipartisan group led by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy arrived in Poland yesterday. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer will lead another group later this week with members of Congress meeting with Ukrainian refugees in a show of solidarity with NATO and Europe. John and Jessa.
All right, CBN's Matt Galka. Thank you, Matt. Well, more than 2.5 million Ukrainian refugees and counting now call Poland home, at least for now.
Even on a rainy day, the border crossing is crowded with war-weary Ukrainians searching for some relief. Wendy Griffith reports from the Polish border.
The faces are many. The stories heartbreaking. But Ukrainians from all walks of life keep pouring over the border into Poland, hoping to find a peaceful place to wait out the war that's ravaging their country.
Today here at the border, it's been raining pretty much all day, and people have been coming here to the Operation Blessing tent to get warm and something hot to drink. Come inside and I'll show you.
Oksana, her 13-year-old son and disabled father, arrived at the border in the pouring rain after fleeing Donetsk, a city in eastern Ukraine, now considered a main target of Russia's military. Her 21-year-old son and husband stayed in Ukraine to defend their country.
It's really hard, and I'm afraid about them. I'm really, really worried about them.
Dennis, a 40-year-old single dad, fled Kharkiv, another area hit hard by Russian shelling. After living in his basement for a month, he's been raising his son alone since his wife died a year and a half ago.
It was too dangerous to go outside because there were constant bombing. So of course it was really hard, but somehow we felt protected.
Although he arrived at the Operation Blessing tent cold, wet, and hungry, Dennis left full and dry thanks to a new coat plus a brand new suitcase to put his belongings in. And that crying baby, smiling and content after being rocked to sleep by an Operation Blessing volunteer. After the sounds of war started giving her 3 young sons nightmares, Marina, also from eastern Ukraine, decided to flee as well, leaving behind an older son and husband to defend the homeland.
Marina, tell me why you left your town.
The Russians were bombing. It was war. It was really horrible.
Do you know where you'll stay tonight?
We don't know exactly where we are staying, but we are relying on volunteers to help us. We don't want to go back to Ukraine right now.
Oksana, Dennis, and Marina were also happy to receive prayer.
Amen.
And thankful that someone like Operation Blessing was there in their time of need. Wendy Griffith, CBN News, on the Polish-Ukrainian border.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Well, a COVID surge among the ranks of Washington's elite is growing. More members of Congress announcing they have tested positive. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is seen at the White House embracing the president last week, just one of many members of Congress to come down with the virus. More than 70 people testing positive after last week's prestigious gridiron dinner. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack is the latest cabinet member to test positive, along with Attorney General Merrick Garland and aides to Vice President Harris.
Well, here with us now, CBN News medical reporter and host of Healthy Living, Lori Johnson. Lori, always nice to have you. Let's start with that super spreader event, the gridiron dinner. Do you believe that that could be indicative of what's in store nationally, Lori, in the weeks to come? Already, BA2 is now accounting for 3 out of every 4 new COVID cases.
Well, health experts say, John, that we are actually on the upswing of yet another surge. Many cities across the country are reporting double-digit increases in just the last week. And health officials say it's probably much, much higher than what we're hearing from public health officials because so many people are using those home tests. And, you know, nobody reports those home tests to the state governments, the state public health boards and the CDC. And then a lot of people aren't even testing with the home test. They're just sick and they're staying home. But really what we need to emphasize is that a lot of people are testing positive. What we really need to look at are those hospitalizations. Yes, they are ticking up slightly, but not nearly as much as the cases, which says a lot of people are getting mild cases.
Lori, nearly all of the people who tested positive in Washington this week were fully vaccinated. What does that tell you about the breakthroughs and these infections?
Well, the gridiron dinner, for example, they had to show proof of vaccination to get in. So many people that we've seen in Washington and elsewhere have some level of immunity through vaccination or from previous infection. So that is actually helping to keep these infections more mild. As we're seeing, yes, a lot of people who are vaccinated are still able to contract the virus, although in lesser numbers. But generally, we're seeing people who have some level of immunity, either through vaccination or previous infection, are getting mild cases. And we do think that this BA2 variant is actually a little bit more mild than other variants we've seen, although it is more contagious, even more contagious than Omicron, which is what we saw in January and February of this year.
Lori, as you well know, up until Omicron's peak earlier this year, coronavirus cases on the whole have been on the decline across the country. If we see surges like those again, I think this is the question everyone wants to know. Does that mean that we're going to see a return to mask mandates and vaccine requirements?
Well, in short, the CDC and the COVID response team has really placed that burden as far as mandates are concerned on local governments. So whatever is going on in your area really will dictate what level of precaution you need to take. And this is true for individuals as well. People have been told to look at their own risk level and take necessary precautions. Do you personally want to wear a mask? Do you personally want to isolate? Do you need a second booster? It kind of all depends on your age and the number of comorbidities, these risk factors that each individual person carries. And that goes with as far as cities and locales. You know, if you see a great big surge in your area, we might have to go to some of those mitigations, but we're probably not going to see anything nationwide. That's what it looks like at this point.
All right. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lori. Well, speaking of surges, the White House tonight announcing new measures to curb a rise in gun violence. The Justice Department today issued a new rule cracking down on so-called ghost guns. Those are privately made firearms that are difficult to trace because they lack serial numbers. The DOJ rule bans buy, build, shoot kits available online or in stores with no background checks.
Israel is on the offensive. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett announcing military action after 4 attacks killed 14 Israelis recently. Israeli soldiers carrying out operations in the West Bank town of Jenin and surrounding areas over the weekend. The IDF killed 1 Palestinian militant and shot 2 brothers of the terrorist who killed 3 people in Tel Aviv last week. 3 other Palestinians died in clashes with Israeli forces. In the city of Nablus, 100 Palestinians attacked a Jewish holy site. Joseph's tomb is revered by Jews who believe the biblical patriarch is buried there. The mob set fire to the site before it was dispersed by security forces. Coming up, the Trump effect, why Republican incumbents are scrambling to defend their seats from fellow members in the GOP.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, welcome back. Television's Dr. Oz got a celebrity endorsement from another prominent TV star turned commander-in-chief, gaining the backing of former President Donald Trump. Mehmet Oz is part of a crowded field of Republican candidates vying for Pennsylvania's open Senate seat. Last week, we brought you a report on Kathy Barnett, whose faith and personal life story define her campaign. Mr. Trump's endorsement of the celebrity heart surgeon over the weekend not only adds wind to Dr. Oz's political sails, though, it will underscore the enduring effect of Trump's hold on GOP politics.
And joining us now is Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections. Nathan, welcome. Big news today for Dr. Oz. How do you think this might shake up the the field, and do you think it could really help Dr. Oz, this endorsement?
Well, I think first you'd always, in a Republican primary, you want to have Trump's endorsement because he's so popular with base Republican voters. This particular endorsement was a little bit of a surprise because typically we're seeing Trump try to endorse frontrunners or people that he thinks are going to that have a more of a sure bet of winning, and thus he can pad his win-loss record. But in this case, Dr. Oz is one of the top candidates, but he hasn't had the momentum. Dave McCormick, the wealthy former hedge fund owner from Connecticut, has been the front runner, and so this shakes up the race a little bit. And the race is coming up. It's May 17th, and we'll see if it's able to push Dr. Oz back up into that kind of one-on-one contention with McCormick.
Well, they're both are showmen, so maybe there's that kindred spirit about having that celebrity background. Nathan, there are at least 12 major elections now with a Republican incumbent set to face major challenges from members of the GOP. How extensive is the Trump effect nationwide?
Well, what we're seeing is that Trump's endorsement in primaries is important, but it's not sufficient. It is not enough just for a candidate to have Trump's blessing. It's up to candidates to use that endorsement to raise money, to communicate it to voters, whether it's in TV ads or radio ads or direct mail pieces. And some candidates are doing a better job than others. But just having Trump's endorsement does not guarantee that you're going to win. And so you have a wide variety of candidates from Congresswoman Liz Cheney in Wyoming, who I think faces a very serious primary, to maybe Congressman Tom Rice of South Carolina, who isn't at as much of risk of losing a primary. But what I'm interested in watching is what happens as these primaries play out, and if Trump's candidates don't win, how does he react? And does that cause him to shake up how he endorses candidates that are late in primaries later on through the summer?
Yeah, and what could it mean for him for 2024? What does Trump's Big 12 strategy, Nathan, tell you about his possible run in 2024?
Well, I think it shows that he is focused on defeating people who he thinks has done him wrong, and in this case voted to impeach him, or in the case of Secretary of State Raffensperger in Georgia, who didn't do enough to overturn Georgia's election results and give those to him. He is on a mission to make sure that he ends those different individuals, that he ends their political careers. And that's fine, but that also isn't necessarily the same thing as being focused on Republicans winning back the House and the Senate. And we'll see if in some cases, potentially the Trump candidate, if they're able to win a primary, might actually make it more challenging for Republicans to win back the House and win back the Senate. So the Trump is under the Republican Party umbrella, but the party doesn't necessarily have the same goals that he does.
From Raffensperger and Kemp in Georgia to most recently Fred Upton in Michigan, the list is long. Nathan, are there any matchups you're using as a canary in the coal mine ahead of the midterms?
I think it's like asking me to choose a favorite of my children. I think they all have fascinating impacts. I think we'll need to wait until late spring, early summer to look at it in totality. Is there a clear trend that the Trump-endorsed candidates are doing well and are prevailing in these key races, or are they falling short? But just kind of identifying one, sometimes there are unique circumstances to that race that could cause it to not be that canary in the coal mine.
All right, Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections, always good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, guys.
And when we come back, the already sky-high car prices and the perfect storm set to send them soaring even higher.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Americans struggling with the effects of soaring inflation believe the economy as a whole is in bad shape. Many in recent polling describing higher prices as a hardship. Pointing to historic indicators, economic experts are warning a recession may be on the horizon. According to former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, since World War II, every time the U.S. has had inflation above 4% and unemployment below 4%, an economic recession has followed. Recession there being defined as 2 consecutive quarters of declining economic output.
Well, with the threat of a recession looming, the cost of new and used cars, already sky high due to COVID, are expected to climb even higher.
This is the war in Ukraine limits materials and strains the supply chain. CBN's Brady Carter reports.
This rising cost chain reaction created by COVID is now exacerbated by the war in Europe. Slow car production and a semiconductor shortage means limited inventory. And while your current ride is likely worth more, you could be in for a rude awakening when you have to get a new one. For more than a year, the global auto industry has struggled with COVID-related production and supply chain issues, ranging from a shortage in microchips to delayed delivery. The war in Ukraine threatens to magnify the problem and prices.
We're very sensitive because we have no inventory anywhere in the chain because of the comeback from COVID and everything being so tight that any bump in the road becomes a real disruption of production. Either a disruption of production or a vastly unplanned for cost increase.
For instance, electric wiring made in Ukraine, critical to the car industry, is now much more difficult to get. Critical Russian exports could also be cut off due to sanctions.
Because you only need to miss one part to not be able to make a car.
That's led to production stoppages and slowdowns at factories in Europe, and analysts say it could be headed our way next. Industry analysts are lowering global production estimates by 2 to 3 million cars a year in 2022 and 2023. For the consumer, it means higher prices, not just for new cars, but used as well.
Before COVID, the average used car price was about $17,000. Post-COVID, or at the end of, hopefully we're at post-COVID, is about $30,000.
Sticker shock is spreading among used car buyers, hoping for a bargain. 3-year-old vehicles taking the biggest jump at almost 40%. Edmunds researchers pointing out the Dodge minivan and Porsche Cayenne is leading the pack. Families are paying nearly double the listed price from last year.
Get huge savings on over 800 new Nissan.
Dan Bannister, president of Bannister Automotive in Virginia and Maryland, says, well, now is a good time to sell your car. You'll pay more to replace it. On the bright side, you're likely to a higher trade-in value to help with the price difference.
The used car prices have gone up, so have the new car prices. So, you don't have the rebates and incentives that the manufacturer put in on the cars previously because they don't have to. Like, some of the cars that might have a $2,000 rebate or a $5,000 rebate, you're not seeing any of those anymore. When you come in, what's listed on the window, that's probably what you're going to pay.
More than 80% of car buyers paid more than the sticker price for new vehicles in January. Compare that to last year's 3%.
But if you have the prices that go up and the interest rates go up, then we're talking about a different story.
That's already happening. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates for the first time since 2018, with more hikes ahead in the coming months to cool inflation. This all leaves the future of car prices a bit uncertain.
In my opinion, I don't think it's going to be an overnight drop, but I think eventually those used car prices are going to go down, which is going to probably offset the increase in the interest rates.
Yeah, the prices just are ridiculous, but what are we supposed to do?
Other considerations include record-breaking gas prices, and car insurance could also be on the way up as Allstate has gotten the okay from 13 states to raise its rates. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Still ahead, glorifying God through golf, introducing the 2022 Masters champion.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
And finally tonight, he went from being ranked number 15 in his third full season on the PGA Tour to earning golf's top honor, donning the coveted green jacket last night. Of course, we're talking about the newest golf star, Scottie Scheffler.
In the last 2 months, though, he shot up to number 1, winning a handful of majors. And last night, the 25-year-old accepted his green jacket after winning the Masters in Georgia.
I really can't put into words what it means to win this golf tournament. And like I said, it's just an honor to be here in the field. And, you know, there's really not much more I can say other than just thank you.
And the newly minted champion said it's not about a golf score, but about glorifying God. And it's not just Scottie, his caddy also a Christian. A little bit of color here. The two of them met at a PGA Bible study on tour. So that's how they kind of got together and formed this friendship and partnership.
Well, congratulations to both. I did not know that, so thanks for sharing, Jenna. Thanks so much for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great night.